I'm sorry, but the road is completely packed now. Unfortunately, it looks like I'll be late.
I'm very sorry, but unfortunately, I don't have time for this project.
I'm very sorry that it happened, but our client told us to do that.
I told you that's not what I wanted.
You gotta be kidding me!
I didn't have any other choice. You know, I'm working hard too.
Don't blame me!
I don't trust anybody anymore.
It's his fault!
Not my fault.
Excuses are an interesting part of human life. They exist in such a nebulous space, sometimes an apt and rightful reason for or against an action, or other times they're something we scoff off from liars as simply avoiding what they don't want to do. We all make them, large and small, true and false, almost every single day. It's actually really easy for any decision to really be an excuse. How often are we faced with a complex situation and we make a determination based on one or only a couple factors surrounding it? You go on a job board and look for what to apply to, but if the distance is over a certain number, you don't even read what the job is. It could be something you might really enjoy, maybe something that even changes the entire course of your life, but we made the determination that distance excluded certain possibilities. But it is a perfectly valid excuse, in fact, one that I'm using right now. It is still a sort of excuse, a simplification of human complexity. When we realize just how easy this whole process is, how natural it is, the question has to come of how far it can go. If excuses are just popping up like that, how much damage could they do? And at the very extreme of things, is everything we know just an excuse against what we never wanted to? Paranoia Agent features Tokyo in the midst of a crisis known as Lil Slugger, a boy on inline rollerblades wielding a bent baseball bat and attacking people with a quick strike, disappearing off just as quick as he arrived. The police obviously end up on his tail, but they find themselves at a loss for what the pattern of the case is. The attacks seem to be almost random in nature, from character designers to production managers or sleazy reporters to grade school kids. They can't find the logical cause and effect that the old school detective Ikari tells the younger Maniwa must exist in every single case. Lil Slugger seems to appear at random anywhere and everywhere that fits the time and place, even within police custody in a locked cell. Maniwa, in what appears to be a descent into madness from his over-efforts on the case, begins to find one similarity though: desperation. All the people who are attacked are hit just at the valley of their lowest moments. Tsukiko, the character designer, is behind on deadlines and having an awful night, just as he strikes. Sarata, an incompetent production manager, messes up the schedule so awfully that he essentially tanks the entire studio and is fired not long before he is attacked. Kawazu is a tabloid-level reporter chasing his next big story to pay his debts for injuring another man's father, but is unable to get anything of use about the Lil Slugger case when he needs it most, until he experienced it firsthand. Yuichi is a grade school boy whose popularity suddenly wanes, turning him into the subject of bullying, turning him into a bully himself, and leaving him totally isolated, but meeting one new person, of course: Lil Slugger. The thread connecting these and more cases is only that fact. It isn't time or place or appearance or relation, but simple desperation. However, proving Ikari right to some degree, there is an answer within it all that makes sense, or at least did make sense to start with. When they investigate Tsukiko, the first case, he remarks that there's a potential she made up the attack. Well, she sustained injury from it, and it certainly put her life in a position almost no one wants to be in. The key word is almost. One thing Maniwa notices about the victims is that they all had a look of relief after they were attacked. Tsukiko appeared to be in a good position before she was, as her popular design Maromi was taking Tokyo by storm. Her coworkers were all jealous of this success and how it gave her special attention above everyone else. The company could say for certain that she'd produce the next big design they had to sell because she succeeded so prominently before. There was something to be jealous of for sure, but there was also a mounting pressure, her past work looming larger and larger over her, creating more and more expectations pushed further and further by promises made from her boss, with a deadline rapidly approaching and nothing to show for it. She had pages and pages of designs, but none that felt good enough. Minutes, hours, days, all wasted. She couldn't do it. And just when this hits its peak, Lil Slugger appears. Being attacked removed a larger, all-consuming source of stress from her life for a moment, replacing it with a lesser one, while also tempering that larger source once it did return. Sitting in a hospital bed after a traumatic assault, no one would expect her to be able to produce the next big design no matter what the deadline was. It was just a random act that couldn't be prevented, so it's not like she's to blame. It just is what it is. And once she returns, the focus is on the long term. If they push her now at this already stressful time, nothing good would come of it, and so even when she's out of the hospital and back to work, it comes with a bit of a reprieve. Well, Lil Slugger isn't a positive situation. In that moment, it was easier than the one she faced. It was relief. Meanwhile, despite how crazy he seems, was right. Lil Slugger did relieve them. He could appear anywhere, at any time, appear where and when he was needed, because he wasn't real. Of course, it's clear that Lil Slugger is simply a representation of this escape. It's confirmed later on when an eyewitness who saw Tsukiko that night claimed she hit herself with a bent pipe, which is found in the gutter at the scene of the incident. It seems like it should have been an open and shut case. I mean, they even tried to find that witness when Tsukiko was still the only victim, but by chance she wasn't there, and quickly the case snowballed and became something entirely new before they could double back, before they could stop it from spreading. The media really latched onto the case, with coverage spanning across many stations, even with theories about the case already forming. Kawazu, the tabloid reporter, was hoping for this to be his big financial break to pay off the debts which were keeping him from being sued. If he got even a simple glimpse into something behind the scenes about the case, it would fetch top dollar as the big in thing. So he seeks Tsukiko out directly, finding her at the hospital or even at home. Since he's a confirmed and obvious creep, she rightly tries to avoid him, literally running away down dark streets. And seeing his opportunity slip away and knowing he won't have an excuse for his lack of payments much longer, a new escape forms. What if it wasn't information he needed from Lil Slugger, but an excuse of his own? What if he was a victim as well? And so, just like Tsukiko, he's attacked, and just like her in that state, of course he isn't going to be pressed for his full responsibilities. Now the coverage can go into a full-on uproar. A second victim means a real case, and a reporter investigating it is even better. Why did it happen? Why them? What is the connection? Is Lil Slugger out to get the media trying to expose them? The theories can really fly from here, and one specific one, local to a grade school, is the most vicious. A popular boy there, Yuichi is known as number one for his charisma, smarts, and athletics all alike. He is the best in everything, skating through his days on easy mode, beloved by everyone as he tips his golden cap. But skates and a golden cap, that's exactly like what minimal Lil Slugger description there is. His classmates catch on to this, and in one day he goes from hero to zero. His desk is painted with insults, his locker filled with them, and his presence absolutely avoided. Feeling himself to be a bit of an egomaniac, he then becomes a bully himself to the only student who stands up for him, Ushiyama, which is captured in photos and spread about the school, destroying his name even more. His bad side comes to the surface so much he wishes for Ushiyama to be attacked by Lil Slugger so he can catch him and win back everyone's hearts and feed his ego once more. And it happens, but not as he thought. He doesn't catch the rollerbladed maniac, which now only makes things worse because he was the only one with Ushiyama when he was attacked. Clearly, he has to be the culprit now. Going outright insane about recapturing his past glory, Yuichi loses it, berated by an internal corruption of the world around him, to the point he's cornered and attacked himself to utter delight. As he explains,
"It's because I've been cleared. Lil Slugger set me free."
He can't be the attacker if he's attacked. It's a temporary pain to solve his problems. We see a painful method in the moment, but to a much greater mental ease. Tucked away in the hospital, detached from his class, and finding himself cleared, it's exactly what he wished for. In the following episode, we open on Maria, a sex worker battling with her own voicemails, with split personalities, one which takes on average days as an average person, and one which goes on wild nights as a more wild one. They communicate by calling home to be heard by the other, each wishing for the other to go away over voicemails. While it certainly doesn't seem like the healthiest expression of all of this, it's technically not harming her any. None of the meetings go wrong that we see. It brings in extra money, and most of all, Maria, the night personality, enjoys it as something validating to her being when contrasted against the somewhat boring Harumi who works at a university. But that balance changes when Harumi is proposed to and accepts. She tries to take the safe, sensible option and give up her nightlife, but each time Maria returns, unpacking her things or even retrieving them from the garbage dump. While her therapist recommends being honest with her fiancé, admitting this to a timid man who self-admittedly hardly leaves his office and proposed by basically saying, please marry me, it doesn't seem like the best option to save what already feels like a precarious arrangement. She's losing track of which days are which, going from picking out a wedding dress to seeing clients in the blink of an eye. Unable to bring herself down to a single personality and save either one, she feels cornered, about to lose the best opportunity of her life, and begins fighting herself in the street. It's her lowest moment when, right on time, Lil Slugger. And after this day, there doesn't seem to be an issue. It would seem the bat killed Maria, not Harumi, and gave one of them relief, at least. But what's really interesting about this case is who Harumi is, Yuichi's tutor. She was the one he expressed relief towards, drawing a true connection in the cases. First it was random, then it was a sleazy reporter covering the victim, then a kid affected by the rumors of the case spread by reporters like him, then the tutor of the child affected by this spread. What we see is, well, something that feels natural, alive. It's like a disease in its first stages, working through the population at a personal level. It doesn't seem to make sense as a series of crimes. The relations are only tangential. There's no motive or relation or opportunity or anything. But as a sort of spread through contact, there's more of a logic. It's simply luck, time, and place. It's something that could have been stopped at ground zero, interviewing the witness, but once it grew legs, it was too fast to stop. It was too effective a disease of desire. It's an escape that was made up way too good to be true, to the point that many believed it was fake. It was too well timed, too well geared for the situation, too perfect an excuse overall. It solved everything that needed solving in that instant, something anyone would wish for. One of the most annoying parts of life is how one problem can seem to fester and grow, taking over everything. A harsh deadline at work that keeps being promised by someone else even though you're the one doing the work, and each day that comes is another day closer and closer to stress, to continuing failure, to losing your job, to having to start over, a cascading, anxious, all-consuming force. Who wouldn't desire something to just come along and fix all that in an instant? A complex problem swept away with a simple answer. I think we all wish for something like that, at least from time to time. And so when Tsukiko does it, and it works, that desire begins to spread. It's like seeing someone who hit the lottery and starting to play it because it fixed all of their worries. Sure, there's a cost, but look at that reward. Kawazu sees it work and does it himself. The rumors carry it to affect Yuichi's life, and he takes the same option and then explains it to Harumi, who copies it just the same. It's part of the paranoia, not just rumors and gossip that stir up fear, but a more hidden version. Desire present in everyone the same way fears are. We see someone be attacked on the street, and we begin to fear that we will be as well. We witness someone win the lottery, and we wish we would as well. While these are vastly different things in effect, they are actually similar in principle. They are two sides of the same coin, each spreading from person to person, the only difference being a possible not in front of each me, me, me. Part of the danger of these easy escapes, before we even get into what they do to us even, is what they do to others. If a fiction which is too good to be true is presented as real, the reality we expect changes with it. I think we've all experienced this with the unfiltered rise of social media, where only the fictional image we want people to see is seen, creating a constant envy. Why not me? This spreads and spreads as everyone begins to live a fake desire for fiction rather than in the actual world around them. And as things grow, it takes on a life beyond this minimal progression, spreading to those far from it in just the same way as those close. Of course, this is the gossip and rumors, factors which only increase the danger in so many ways. We mentioned an attack on Ushiyama, but not how it happened. What was his corner? Did the student election have him stressed? Was it Yuichi's bullying that was too much? Maybe there were problems at home? Well, it was nothing. Ushiyama was not backed into a corner like the rest. In fact, Yuichi's hatred of him came from the fact that all of this was actually great for Ushiyama, who was now a shoo-in for the student council president. He wasn't athletic or super smart or instantly beloved by everyone, but he was a positive force beginning to grow. He was an average person living the best life he could, just trying to be happy with what existed. He admits he's not athletic or charismatic or any of that, but he lives in reality and makes the best of it. He was against what Lil Slugger represented, and so of course he was attacked, but by a copycat, Kozuka, an 8th grade student. He fails to bring down a second victim in his copycat assault and is taken in by the police and assumed to be the Lil Slugger. But in questioning, he's delusional, explaining the whole thing as a D&D style campaign against evil since he is, of course, a holy warrior. But as Ikari grows more impatient and aggressive, and as Kozuka fails to explain some of the cases making it clear he might not be the one, he's eventually pressured to snap and admits to being a copycat. But he's also Fox, an anonymous user on a message board for people who are seeking to make life-ending pacts together, where he writes about wanting to do something sensational before he dies that makes the world pay. And the sensationalism around the Lil Slugger case, which had taken over all of Tokyo's attention, was exactly his opportunity to do that. The spreading paranoia, which was technically a desire for perfect excuses, is what created this copycat's excuse. The avoidance of issues gave this boy the chance to not only attack 2 people, but also to have his self-inflicted death in police custody, which becomes a real Lil Slugger incident, force both detectives off the case, which lets fear reign completely free over it. If it had never been blown to such a sensation, talked about as the kind of thing which could make the world pay, there would have been no Kozuka, and there would still be people keeping order over it. But the gossip and rumors created the perfect opportunity for the worst outcome. There will always be someone ready to take advantage of how primed the public becomes for these things, a clear and present danger of the sensation. They are a self-feeding cycle, only creating more paranoia, which creates more rumors, which creates more paranoia, endlessly and forever. The too good excuses of some create not just that envious desire, but also counter excuses, reactions to the initial events that themselves only drum up more attention and more sensation. Avoiding reality will always invoke negative outcomes, whether it's the hidden desire of witnessing or the counter-reaction of those beyond them. It is a completely twofold spread. One episode specifically highlights this, with a group of women spending their days gossiping about the Lil Slugger situation. Their stories begin as exaggerations, which, brilliantly, appear to be a part of the show style of exaggeration. A boy sneezing up equations he memorized for an exam looks exactly like how the anime would present a boring concept interestingly, and so we accept it as a useful exaggeration for the viewer. But we see that these stories they're telling are actually a within-universe exaggeration, literally expressing what these women say. They have this odd ritual of rumors going, where they go through the same motions in a cycle, the wave and the look over the shoulder, as they validate their time through the shock and awe of some juicy gossip, with each gasp or oh my creating a stronger desire for the next. None of the stories they tell are true, but when questioned on it, the others actually confirm what they know the others making up, saying they saw it or heard it too, of course. Why is this? Well, Lil Slugger has become an issue so large everyone is affected, even if they aren't affected. Everything is seen through a Lil Slugger lens. It's the hot, important topic of the moment. And that comes with a sort of value, a validation of being important by being related to or knowledgeable of it. If you have an almost unbelievable story about this thing, people will listen like never before. People will pay attention because it's already on their attention. It validates the speaker and the listener both at once, the desire of the former and the fear of the latter, two sides of the same coin. These forces aren't opposed. They mix and mingle and only send the spread more out of control. But in this circle, there is a fourth woman, the new one. She's not up on their little ritual of gossip yet, but we do see her learning it as it goes along, and she is picking it up rather quickly. Despite that though, she does begin to question their stories as made up, but of course it's scoffed off by the others because they're all defending their falsehoods to maintain their own sense of identity. It's a pact of lies. You know you're lying, but if there's so many lies, then where is the truth? It's another escape from reality in breaking down reality. It's ignoring the truth for lies that make one more important. So the fourth makes up stories of her own as well to fit in, catching their disease of desire, but despite being just as implausible as the others, she's mocked for their supposed poor quality. It's a matter of limitation. If everyone is lying, then suddenly you're back at an effective reality. It has to be exclusive, stoking that envious spread even more. The ins versus outs nature of it all gets so bad that the fourth woman, Kamohara, keeps trying and trying to tell a story, but each one fails and she's eventually dispersed and depressed. But upon returning home, she finds that her husband has been attacked by Lil Slugger, and it's to her delight. She doesn't call an ambulance or help him, but instead simply madly asks how it happened. How was he attacked, and what can she rush in to tell those others as a bit of juicy gossip for her own validation? This is how far one woman's initial escape from reality spread. It made a world where reality itself has lost all value, where the truth is just whatever feeds this now omniprevalent and perverse disease of desire. But this isn't the only way to escape. So far it's been through an overfocus on the negative things spreading, but what about no focus at all on the other end of the spectrum? Not escape, but escapism. Tsukiko, being a character designer, plays a much more important role in the story than just to serve as a source of stress. She's here because she struck gold with Maromi, a mascot character that absolutely took off. People wear Maromi shirts and have Maromi bags, with Maromi keychains hanging from them as they go home past the Maromi balloons to watch the freshly airing Maromi anime. Well, at first it was just a source of comfort to Tsukiko, one she always holds close to her person. It became something huge for the entire city and maybe even beyond. This is one of those details I love because it's something you just start to notice everywhere very naturally. The group meeting up for the purpose of an end don't call out their Maromi backpacks, they just have them. The rabid anime fan isn't exclaiming about his Maromi shirt, he just wears it. No one comments on how Tsukiko has to always carry Maromi, but it becomes absolutely clear that she does. By the last third of the anime, Maromi has stuck in your mind, and it is absolutely everywhere. It seems like as the Lil Slugger case is growing, so is Maromi. As one legend grows, so does the other. What we see is that the more and more paranoia takes hold, the more people have to fear. At first, it was random attacks on a select few people. Of note, but only for a moment. It's not too much of a concern. Then it spread out a bit more, but there was some loose connection to be drawn they were outside of for sure. But when it happened to somebody even in police custody, and a former boxer and a baseball player on live TV, and Lil Slugger, well, forget about a kid, he was suddenly a big buff adult now, or actually a real, legitimate, genuine monster with fangs and huge and everything, and he was striking everyone, anywhere, at any time, and oh god, you could be the next one if cornered, anyone could be. It had become something that could happen to anyone who was cornered, whether it was due to sports or emotions or work or anything. The only factor that could prevent it, at least as far as the rumors led it to grow, was to prevent yourself from becoming desperate. What a terror that if you slip for a moment, you could be the next latent criminal. I mean, next victim. You could be stuck in traffic, mad that that texting idiot made you miss that light after a bad day, or you're staying inside after a bad breakup, all depressed, or you missed your flight on vacation trying to relax to get away from it all. And any of those situations could end in Little Slugger. Any situation could end in Little Slugger. In this fear, the people naturally begin to seek out comfort. Mindless, brainless, formless, meaningless comfort. The exact thing Maromi is. That almost annoyingly slack design, distinct enough but with no real features, Maromi is kind of amorphous, that just right level of understuffed to fit any gap. It is whatever is comforting, something anyone can hold in any way because it is simply representing this rampant escapism. The people were afraid, and dumping all their thoughts and feelings into a stupid stuffed dog, like Tsukiko always had, kept the fear at bay. It grows so bad that the only thing that matters is more Maromi. The studio making the Maromi anime, well, it wasn't easy on them. By the end of the process, most of them are dead, breaking under the pressure, and you know what happens to people who break. One of the last few snaps kills his former boss of about 1 minute and takes the only episode they managed to produce, rushing it to the station to try and have it there just moments before it's set to air. Right outside the station, he becomes the latest Little Slugger victim. But when he's found, the response isn't shock or fear, but actually relief. Thank God the Maromi anime is here. And he's left in the street bleeding while they grab the tape. The worst outcome was the people not having their comfort. A whole studio might have died, but we got more Maromi, damn it. Fear has grown so bad that comfort had to grow just as harshly to compensate. A twofold spread encouraging a twofold spread itself. An unstoppable force. We keep mentioning this stupid stuffed dog as this constantly carried comfort for Tsukiko as well, and that's because, well, see for yourself.
Don't get bothered by them. Everybody, they're just jealous of you, Tsukiko. Don't worry. It's not your fault.
She begins to see Maromi come to life and dissuade her from certain forms of thinking, often telling her not to consider such negative or uncomfortable things, that these people are wrong or she's special or that she just doesn't need it. Don't think, just take a rest. Take a rest. Take a rest. Specifically, after the news breaks regarding her attacks, many fans wish her support, but some leave much more mean or aggressive comments, claiming it's too convenient and all made up. While many of these are outright harassment, they are also right. She did make this up as an excuse. So when Maromi comes to life and tells her not to worry about that silly stuff, it's not excusing away a bad situation, it's excusing away the results of her own excuse. It's treating fiction as reality in her own mind, unable to even consider the truth that she made up. Unable to even consider the truth full stop. That's what all this comfort is. That's what Maromi is. It's avoiding the truth which stands before her, which stands before them all, whether that truth is their own lies, a false terror, or the stress they have always felt. The escapes and this escapism, it's all one big trial of avoiding reality at all costs. It's a dream that's overtaking everyone because they see how pleasant and seemingly perfect the lies are, for everyone to slip into winning their own little lottery, for everything to be perfect in a world created for them, rather than the one we all share full of its inconvenient truths. And as these truths grow so awful from everyone escaping them, then so does the stress of the ones still facing them, and so escapism grows in tandem. It's a desire spreading like a disease for that simple ideal world that just doesn't really exist. But what's the issue? If everyone is happy, does it matter what's real and what's not? Should we all really just take a rest, ignore a few things, and if we stop caring, well, then they'll stop mattering? Of course it matters. We just haven't covered how things all go to shit yet. While it's true that Little Slugger and Maromi fix the situations for a moment, there are limits to all things. Tsukiko gets a break, but by the final episode, she's being crushed under that deadline just the same as she was before. Actually, maybe even worse. Her boss drives her home from events, and things have grown so desperate that this once seemingly docile man pins her against the car door and yells at her that she has to do something about this design. Her injury pushed the deadline back, but only because there was no other option. It's not like she got anything more done with that extra time of recovery, because the point was to not stress her out more. The solution was making the problem larger. The situation still needs to be handled now, just more desperately and with more riding on it, all the way up these businesses' change involving much more than just herself or her company. Lil Slugger only kicked the can down the road, and your legs get more tired with each kick. This would happen with all of them eventually. Kawazu is the same, pushing back a deadline and not getting anything done with that extra time. Yuichi could very well be suspected of faking it when he went back, and he was still caught bullying. Maromi never got a true resolution, so who knows when Maria would show up next. And these are all things we see. There are dedicated shots of them all still facing the same issues later on. None of them are actually solved, they're just delayed and made much worse with that delay. Avoiding reality only holds one back, plugging holes, but building pressure until the dam finally bursts. We see this specifically with Tsukiko because her story actually starts long before the anime's opening. The position she starts in is already her being held back by Lil Slugger as an excuse, intertwining Maromi into it. The design is actually one she'd had since she was a child, based on her puppy, which went by the same name. Tragically, it was killed all those years ago due to a passing child on inline rollerblades with a bent baseball bat who injured her, and she let go of the lead and it ran into traffic. On the same sheet where she sketched Maromi all those years ago, there's a tiny one hidden amongst the rest, an unknown shadowy figure holding up a bat, almost exactly the same sketch she provided the police with all those years later. The idea she used to escape from a responsibility now is the same one she used all those years ago. Her father was strict, and it said that getting her a puppy was a lot of work for him, so when she gets distracted by pain and lets go of the leash, allowing it to wander into traffic and be hit, she sees two options. Face a strict father with the mistake, which may lose his trust in her to ever do something like that again, or lie and create a nice, neat package that solves it all with only momentary detriment. And right then, of course, Lil Slugger was born. There's a reason why Tsukiko can't come up with a new character design after Maromi. It's because she's just not a good designer. She's a girl who was obsessed with the mistake she made and lied away and never let it go. She literally holds on to Maromi everywhere she goes. When she does seem to almost have a good design, Maromi comes to life and deletes all her work because he's always on her side. She doesn't need a new design. He tells her it's not her fault, whatever the case may be. In her lies, she found a comfortable escape, but that escape became all she had. She would never meet the deadline, never escape that pressure. The dam would burst much worse than the initial trickle it was meant to hold back. At the conclusion of the anime, she's just another office worker and not a designer, because she never was a designer. It was just the thing that made the most benefit from her obsessive lie. It took her as far as it could, the last kick of a tired leg managed against the can. There was nothing left. And since this spread, since it was the path that everyone was following, it becomes true for the entire city as well. While no one can recognize it, lost in their own little escapist worlds, the actual one around them is growing destitute and destroyed. When one of them finally breaks free, what they see before them is a Tokyo of ruined buildings, filling up with a black ooze. Filling up with Lil Slugger and Maromi, who are one and the same, both from Tsukiko's origins to how they function in ignoring reality. The paranoia which spread made this world so dependent on an escape from reality on either end that what remains is nothing. The real world has been destroyed to replace it with false ones. This even happens to Chief Ikari, the man who is most set within reality, harshly objecting to the mystical nature of the Lil Slugger case. But as he was forced to resign due to Kozaka's death, which lost the money he needed to support his chronically ill wife, and the purpose he'd held alike since they were never able to have kids to fulfill him in another way, he starts to work multiple jobs to make up for this, spending less and less time at home and stating a harsh truth. The world he desires just doesn't exist anymore due to this modern age madness. He dreams of an idyllic vision of the past where good cops chase down simple robbers with burlap sacks. A clear-cut case, not the psychological torture of this modern hectic world. As he picks up the symbol of escapism in a Maromi keychain, he starts to become lost in this world, keeping away visions of his wife in order to instead see Tsukiko as the daughter he never had to try and fulfill himself in this dream reality. Slowly, as the fantasy piles up, he's lost just like everyone else. But he can't keep his memories of her out of this world for long. While neither person is ideal, they formed a team, filling in the gaps the other couldn't, supporting each in their own ways. He worked hard for money, she made the meals to keep him going. It sounds so standard and bleh, the kind of thing I'd call a series out for praising, but it's a case where something so often negative was true and pure for them. They're connected for real, so when he feels she's in danger, he can't help but be with her even within this fantasy, where in her last moments she reminds him of something important. Earlier, when she began to say his life would be easier without her, he remarks,
"You're just trying to find some way to escape from all this. You can't give in, or delude yourself into thinking there's an easy answer."
And even though it's a negative result for oneself, going so far as wishing for the end, this is true. It's making a complex situation simple for an easy way out, accepting an answer that isn't true because it ends struggle. Is he somewhat avoiding her by working these jobs? Yes, he is. Does his gaze sometimes avert? Yes, it does. But does he wish to be rid of her? Absolutely not. There's tens of years of evidence proving otherwise. There's how in that moment he refused to give up on her, even when she gave him an excuse to give up on her. Saying he's sick of her is just an excuse to call it quits, to not face the situation in true, even when the truth is better, because the truth is more complex. The truth, prolongation of the situation, means more suffering mixed in with the benefits. But it is the only route with benefit at all. All of this is expressed in her meeting with Lil Slugger, where he grows and shrinks with her own words and confidence in life. He swings at her, he comes real close, but can't genuinely harm her because she has decided not to be harmed by her own escape. She refused the simple answer his terror provided, even though her end was still so near. With this reminder, Ikari is forced to do the same. There isn't some grand revelation to put to it all, some series of words that sound shocking and new, only the simple phrase,
"But that's the reality I have to face!"
With this statement, he bats away the Maromi keychain, rids himself of the desire to escape, and comes to see the ruined Tokyo. There's only this simple phrase because it isn't an answer. Facing reality is not a solution to problems, it's only a statement of recognizing that there are problems. The issue with Lil Slugger and Maromi is the very fact that they purport to be an answer in simple terms. They take a complex reality and turn it into something which can't ever truly exist. They are inherent falsehoods. A wish for things to be simple is a wish to leave reality, and the only true way to do that is one we wish no one will face. Facing reality means accepting that there is no answer, that all we can do is wake up each day and continue facing reality, continuing to examine its problems and find the solutions, which eventually become problems themselves and need more solutions. But if there's an end to the problems, then what is left to living? They are inherent to life. There's nothing to be done about that. Sometimes this means facing a very unsatisfactory conclusion, witnessing awful things that have nothing to be done about them, like having no place in a strange new world. But things change to make that world strange and new, and they'll change again and again and again and again forever, because more problems pop up from past solutions, and the new solutions change its direction until they're problems themselves, and the cycle repeats. So one day it might have a place for him again. There doesn't need to be an answer that makes it all make sense right now. That doesn't exist. All there needs to be is a continuation which allows the possibility of more change. But Ikari is not the one who saves the day. He is a catalyst, bringing things into recognition, but it's important that Tsukiko faces her own truth as well. There's no point in belaboring the same things again. She does it the same way Ikari does, taking responsibility for her actions that day as she relives the memory, and that admission is what frees the city from the ooze. The reason why it's important that she fixes these mistakes, the reason why it's important that Lil Slugger and Maromi are her creations, but it all somehow affected so much, is in the title. Paranoia. It's stressing that this isn't simply a short-term or personal issue when we escape reality. As we covered in too much detail, it strokes a dark desire in others, a counter-desire in more, and an escapism from the rest. Fiction can always appear better than reality, and the more people who live in fiction, the less will want to live in reality. She has to end it because she started it, because that's how far these things can grow. How far one lie can be carried from witnessing, from gossip and rumors, from validation and the desire found in fiction rather than truth. It shows how long-lasting these effects can be, that our escapes will not simply be a moment in the past, but they will become our present, incorporated within our very beings. Tsukiko is the lie she told about Lil Slugger, the escapism of Maromi, and she is nothing more. And look how simple it could have been. All she needed to do was see what was right in front of her all those years ago, and none of this would have happened. One line stresses how ridiculous this is perfectly.
The whole world is about to end because of a goddamn puppy.
It very well could when fiction, and the desire for fiction, is so powerful. The only way the current problems become the next solutions, to become more progressive problems themselves, is to face them. To see them and understand them, and to do so together. The more people who escape, the less power we have to keep moving forward, and the more who will give up, cascading into oblivion. We can't lock ourselves into place. We cannot return to the past. We cannot make what was never great to begin with great again. To believe in something so silly is a deluded fantasy which only requires more and more delusion to uphold itself. I've been about as unsubtle as I can be here in the end without simply saying it plain and simple. There is no section of research for this video because this is something we all witness every single day if we're paying attention. To be honest, I didn't plan for this to be the ending, it's just what came naturally from the themes. It's just what I feel when I witness the escapism of fools around me, endangering the safety of me and my friends daily, where some people's powerful fiction is a world where I and others I love don't exist. We all escape some things at some times, but to escape at all times is not a personal issue. It is a growing disease that threatens the entire world. To do so is harmful and selfish. And I hope that in my own somewhat selfish, somewhat escapist way, this has at least thrown a drop into the opposite direction of that tide, and that all the drops we throw together become a much more positive tide of their own to counter it. To say any more would be pointless. So thank you to the wonderful patrons who help make what could have been an escapist dream into a positive reality, and thank you to everyone alike for your time that's so much more valuable than you may even know. I hope I'll see you again soon.